Hi everyone, my name is Meg Loeks, and I'm a children's portrait photographer, Sigma Pro, Pro Photo Legend of Light, and Click and Mom's mentor and instructor. I live in a remote part of Michigan with my husband, 4 little children, and lots of animals. Majority of my work is all shot within the comforts of my own home. Now, with everything that is going on, it's such a crucial time to document your home life and be your family's storyteller. In this video, I'm going to discuss creative ways for you to document your new normal and how to stay inspired. So I wanted to talk a little bit about gear and what I shoot with. My camera body is the Sony a7R4, and I have all Sigma Art prime lenses. Typically when I'm shooting inside, my go-to lenses are the Sigma Art 24mm and the Sigma Art 35 1.2, and that's the one I have on my Sony right now. When I am shooting from above, so the bird's eye perspective, I'm almost always using my 24mm. And the reason is because it works awesome in tight spaces. I'm able to capture a lot of my environment with 24. The 35 is definitely my go-to lens though. I feel like out of all the wide angles that I do have, the 35 is definitely the sharpest and fastest in working with low light situations. And I just love it for environmental portraiture. So when I'm shooting inside and photographing my kids, I'm almost always grabbing the 35. Outside, I love to shoot with telephoto lenses. At the moment, my favorite lens is the Sigma Art 105 1.4. And the reason is just because it's incredibly dreamy. I get just the most amazing bokeh from this lens. And so I'm usually picking this guy up and shooting with this when I'm photographing my kids outside. It really isolates my children from the background too, makes them pop. I do have a lot of room where I shoot, around our property to kind of back up and pull away from my kids. And you're gonna see in a lot of examples that I'm actually standing far back from my children, but I still get amazing compression with this lens just because it's of its length, and then also being able to shoot at 1.4 easily and get that nice compression. And you're going to see an example in a lot of the examples I show that I'm often at 1.4 or 1.6. The other lens I love to use is my Sigma Art 85. I do think it's the most versatile telephoto lens, just like the 35 is for me inside. And I love the 85 because I don't have to stand too far away from my kids when I'm using that lens. And I still get, beautiful compression and bokeh with it, but I'm able to move around quite easily, still be kind of close to them and not stand quite a ways back from them. And I don't miss a moment with that lens, I feel like. So the 85 is great for every day. It is incredibly fast and sharp too, and that's the other reason I love it, is that it is, I think, the fastest telephoto lens that I own. Okay, so now that I've talked a little bit about my gear, I wanted to dive into what I'm going to be discussing today, and I've invited you into my home. Nothing fancy, but 95% of what I shoot is all within my home and on our property here. We have like a little small hobby farm, and that's where I feel most inspired. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I do. When I'm looking for inspiration, I'm typically looking of course, at my children, things that they do, little quirks and mannerisms, milestones, of course, but all of the everyday moments, the in-between moments that make up our day. To me, that's so incredibly important. Routine moments, it could be as simple as, breakfast at the table, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, taking a bath. All those things are inspiration for me to document, and quite often I'm getting in front of the camera because specifically with my daughter, she's really young, so she's quite dependent on me. She's 1.5, and so I'm heavily involved in her life. So I want to be in front of the camera because she's often at my side and she depends on me for a lot of things. So with self-portraiture, it can be really, really challenging, of course, but for me it's very rewarding. And so I'm capturing a lot of self-portraits. With my older boys, they have become more independent, so I do love to kind of capture their developing personalities and hobbies that they're starting to really love and enjoy. And so as they get older, the way I photograph them, it does change. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, show you some examples, and then also give you a little bit of a behind the scenes of me actually photographing my children. One thing I always like to encourage other photographers is to write down your routine. A lot of the things that you do throughout the day can all be documented. It can be the most mundane thing. It can be, just your children getting dressed in the morning or brushing their teeth or combing their hair, tying their shoes, helping you make breakfast, lunch, dinner, eating at the table. All those things, those routine, mundane moments that fill up our day are all things that you can document and you should be documenting. If your children are really young, chances are they're quite dependent on you. So that's a great time to get yourself in front of the camera with them. It could be just maybe you helping to dress them or to feed them. That would be a perfect moment to set your camera on a tripod and get in front of the frame. When I'm doing self-portraits, I typically like to have a more narrow aperture than I normally have when I'm shooting just every day. When I'm photographing my kids without being in front of the camera and I'm just photographing them, my aperture is pretty close to wide open, normally around like 1.8 or 1.6. When I'm in front of the camera, I often have my aperture at 3.2 or higher to ensure that I really nail focus. I think milestones are one of the most obvious things to document. As parents, it's, I think, a big reason why we're often picking up our camera to, capture these really big moments of, our children's lives. Another thing that I really love to capture is mannerisms. Each age and stage has its own quirks to it. And often these are my absolute favorite things to capture. Perfect example would be my daughter finding her belly button for the first time, or, finding her feet, or my middle son, the way he walks with his hands behind his back, just like my dad does. Details are obviously so important. And I know that when children are really little, it can be very exciting. There's lots of things that they're discovering and doing. And I do feel like in many ways, they're just easier to document. I don't think that they're very camera aware, which can make it easier. One of the things I always like to tell photographers is if you're struggling to capture older children or multiple children in general, get them around food, get them around the table, get them out on the porch with snacks. This is a great way to capture older kids and multiple children in the frame. Everyone loves food. They love, especially kids, they love snacks like ice cream and watermelon. You'll see in a lot of my work, I'm documenting a lot of moments around our dining room table. Children are naturally playful, so another thing that you can do is get your kids involved in some sort of activity. Get them playing, whether it's inside or it's outside. Get them doing something, and that's going to help them relax in front of the camera, forget about you maybe, and they'll be focusing on what they're doing. Don't forget to unglue your feet. Get your safe shot first of them playing or whatever they're doing, but then move around. Consider different perspectives like shooting from above. Also consider, adding depth to your image by layering, including something in the foreground and in the background that's going to give layers to your frame and enhance depth. One of the challenges of shooting inside is that it can be hard to keep your kids in good light. So get them outside. That's going to take a lot of stress off your shoulders and help you relax just by photographing them outside, in their element, playing, and you're going to have a lot of room, of course, to work with too. If you have pets, chances are they're a big part of your family, so don't forget to capture them with your children. It's going to help them relax, of course, too. Some of my absolute favorite images have been when our pets are in the frame with my kids. We have a lot of pets. We have chickens, we have dogs, we have cats. So they're a big part of our lives, and they're often around us. So it's important for me to be capturing them with our family. One last thing I wanted to mention that I do think helps with creativity and motivation is personal projects. I like to start about 2 or 3 personal projects at the beginning of the year. Sometimes I start them, in the middle of the year. Just depends on, when ideas come to me. But some of these projects are things like capturing all 4 of my children in the frame together once a month, or capturing a self-portrait once a week. I do try to keep these personal projects obtainable. I think that, it's easy to get burnt out if you, set your goals extremely high and make it, really challenging on yourself. I do think it's super important to challenge yourself, of course, but I also think it's important to keep the goals obtainable. What I'd like to now do is show you a little BTS video of me photographing my children inside my home, just to kind of show you how I'm working with them and, how I'm kind of setting the scene and show you how I'm working with light as well. This is a BTS video of my daughter in our dining room with our new puppy. And she has a bowl of popcorn. I'm photographing her eating the popcorn. She's definitely giving our dog a couple of the kernels. And it's important to mention here that it's okay to give dogs unseasoned popcorn, but just not too much of it. You definitely want to keep it minimal. And so she's given our puppy here just a few kernels. But she's sitting here and I'm just photographing her eating popcorn, something that we regularly have as a snack. And you could see the window is off camera left. She's facing that window. So there's really nice light on her profile. It's a north-facing window, so there's always soft light coming through that north-facing window. It's the only window I have in my dining room. I'm often only working with one light source. I like directional, dramatic light. As you can see, I've changed my perspective here. So I got the first shot standing in front of her, off to the side, and then I got up on the table. I have a camera strap, really important for safety to be wearing a camera strap when you're shooting from above. So I'm wearing a camera strap, holding my camera and photographing her from above as well, with my puppy on the floor here. And I'm very intentional with color layering here. She has some red flowers on her outfit, but then I've also added some accents, red accents within my frame to enhance depth and give just my image more layering and be really intentional with coloring. So often what I'm doing is I'm getting ideas from my children on things to photograph. And then I often set the scene. In looking at the environment that I'm going to be shooting in, making sure that everything I'm going to include within my frame is going to enhance the story. And if it doesn't, if it's going to be distracting, I'm going to take it out of the room. I'm paying attention to light, how it's going to be falling on my subject, and I'm paying attention to the colors and layers within my frame. I set my exposure before I even get my children in front of the camera, because I don't have very long to work with them, especially my daughter, who's really young. I often only have a few minutes and then it's over. So before I get them into the frame, I'm setting the scene, getting my exposure locked in. And then when I do get them into the scene, I'm usually, having them do something, whether it's eating or, some sort of activity to keep them engaged and relax and, not, pose them in any way. And so I'm setting up the scene that way and getting my safe shot first, and then trying to get creative with my composition and move around, unglue my feet. Now, it's really important for me to mention that you don't always, of course, have to be setting up the scene and, doing all of these things. And please don't. I think you'll drive yourself crazy if you're always doing this. If I have the time to, focus on setting up the scene and making sure my lighting and colors and composition, are all the way I want them to be, great. But when I'm working with little children especially, I don't always have time to do that, and that's okay. Not everything I share has to be made public. It can be just for myself. It can be just for my family. And it's important to know that, just picking up my camera, for me, it's a big part of me, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. And so if I'm just picking up my camera every day, lowering my expectations, it really makes all of this so enjoyable. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's such an important time to be picking up your camera and documenting our new normal. I hope that you found these tips valuable and inspirational.